Hi. Sorry that they introduced me with stuff about my matric. I don't know. I don't really know why. So my name's Yusuf, and I believe that in townships like Guguletu and other under-resourced communities in South Africa, that we have equivalent entrepreneurial potential to that which is in Silicon Valley, to Harvard Business School, to any institution or country in the world which is renowned for developing world-class entrepreneurs. And I'm not talking about talent that's ready to speak on a stage like this and tell you about what they've achieved and what they're going to achieve. I'm talking about talent that is there, and if we identify it and develop it correctly and invest in it, then it can compete with the best in the world. Those people can compete with the best in the world. And we've set up the Awetu project. We set it up 3 years ago to do exactly that, to identify these people and to invest in them. I just wanted to tell you a little bit today about what Awetu does, the story that, the journey we've been on over the last 3 years, and my personal story really about why I care about the fact that that talent is there and why I thought it was important to do something about it. And so we're going to start the story here with my family. And that's actually the moment my little sister was born. It was a house in Mayfair, and what you might notice from this picture is that my dad is an Indian South African guy, and my mum is a Welsh lady. And so immediately, you see that you can imagine this was quite a weird South African experience, to be in a mixed-race family living under apartheid. And my dad left South Africa when he was 17 because he felt like he couldn't become a doctor here. He met my mum, and they decided to come back. And I think their idea of conservative parenting was not to come back to a country where it was illegal for them to be married with a child. It was to have me in England so that I could get a British passport, and then to come back in case anything happened to them. And so to give you an idea of what a strange experience this was growing up, at one point every single member of my family had a different racial classification. So my dad was Indian, my mum was white, I was unclassified because I was born outside South Africa, my brother was other colored, and my sister was other Asian. And my parents got us, they got us involved in things. They came back to be involved in the anti-apartheid struggle, and they got us involved, and they got us going to rallies and doing things like this. But also, I think more than a political thing, it was a very personal thing. My parents' first jobs were both in Alexandra Township in the heat of the 80s. There's a picture of my mum standing outside Alex Clinic, covered in blood, fully pregnant with my brother, stopping police from coming into the hospital to get young people out who had been shot by police on that day. My dad was Madiba's doctor on his first trip abroad. He went with him all over the world. He served on the Truth Commission. And apart from their experiences, my own experiences, I was there on that day. I'm sure some of you were as well. I was at Ellis Park. And it remains one of the most vivid and incredible memories of my life. And so by the time I got to the end of high school, I didn't know much. As you can see, I was fairly goofy and clueless. But what I did know was that I was a South African, and more than that, that I was a new South African, that I really believed in this idea of a country where people were willing to sacrifice so that everyone could be equal, and in a country that really respected every single person. And like you've been told, from high school, I sort of stumbled into Harvard. I'd never been to America. I looked at pictures on a website. Someone suggested I should apply, and I applied, and I stumbled in. And subsequently, I tried really hard. I don't say I stumbled, but I got into Oxford. The experience, however, was very similar. I had 8 months to think about going to Harvard, from graduating here, matric, to going over there. And in that time, all I thought about was, can I really compete in a place like that? And what I've realized subsequently is that growing up in South Africa, I think it's changing now with the emergence of the developing world, but I think we have a bit of an inferiority complex when it comes to these kind of places and people. I definitely did. And I thought about, I hope that I can just hang in that place. I don't think I can really compete, but I hope I just don't fail, basically. But what I realized when I got there was that these people they became my friends, and you get to know people as people. I was abroad for about 8 years, all in all, 4 at Harvard, 2 years on Wall Street, and 2 at Oxford. And you realize people are just people. And all that's happening in those places is a very simple formula. They take thousands of applicants, they screen for the most talented in a very robust way, and then they develop that talent using world-class resources. The endowment of Harvard is something like $30 billion at this point, I think. And so almost inevitably, you take the best people, you give them the best resources, what you get is world-class entrepreneurs, world-class scientists, world-class leaders. And I became quite interested and actually a little bit obsessed with the idea of talent. And why is it that these people are considered world-class? And we in South Africa, or why didn't I consider myself to be? And why do we in South Africa not think of our own people in the same way? And do we develop talent in South Africa as efficiently as what they do as they do at a place like a Harvard or an Oxford? And what I came to the conclusion I came to was basically that we do in some communities. In a community like this, for example, or the example I'm giving here is Adrian Gore with a company like Discovery. I think in the middle classes, potentially in politics historically, and maybe in sport, or not maybe in sport, definitely in sport, we develop our talent excellently. But in one group of people in this country, we don't think about talent at all. Instead, we talk about this group in terms of a problem, and that group consists of the poorest people in the country. And I think that was brought home to me. I was coming home, I was going back and forth when I was abroad, and at one point we had a group of Harvard economists advising the president. And there was a sign, and all the signs said, the Harvard group says, the Harvard group says. And every time I'd stop at a traffic light, there'd be a sign saying the Harvard group says, and there'd be a guy asking for money, and people would be reading the sign and ignoring this guy. They wouldn't even give him eye contact. Now, why is that thing almost like the word of God, and this guy can't even get eye contact? And it struck me that I thought about it, and logically, in terms of the numbers, that didn't really make sense. Because, first of all, just as a country, if we're talking about 47, 50 million people, whatever it is now, talking about 5 million unemployed, let's call it another 5 to 7 million in really vulnerable positions at the lowest rung of the economic ladder. Are we really just going to write off a quarter of our population? It doesn't make sense as a development strategy that we should all be looking out for that group as people who aren't part of it. But also, we know, as South Africans, the world knows, we've never given people in that group a chance. We've never let them compete. And if you never let people compete, why are you writing off their talent? It makes no sense. Every group of people probably has the same distribution of entrepreneurial talent as any other group. So why do we say that that group is just a write-off? That was the logical point, but the experiential point was, and I'm sure you all know it, I think that's why when I tell people about Awetu, it makes sense to them because everyone in South Africa experiences it. People who you interact with on a daily basis, whether they are on the street selling things, whether they're fixing cars, whether they're in your home cleaning, for example, whether they're a waiter, people who are smarter than us, people who are more charismatic, people who are more resilient, and are simply constrained by a lack of access to resources and formal training. So logically, I was convinced. Experientially, I was convinced. And so I moved home after Oxford in 2009, and I wanted to develop this idea of, okay, if we can find these people, they are world-class people, I was convinced. If we could find these world-class entrepreneurs and we could invest in them, then imagine the social return, but also the financial return. Because economies are just about people, and if we can find the best, really world-class entrepreneurs and invest in businesses alongside them, we can also make money. And when we set up this model, we looked at all the things that existed, and the problem really in these communities is that, first of all, the standard information we have, it's useless, in my opinion. First of all, I don't care if you finished matric, because if you dropped out when your teacher was coming to school drunk and your class was full of 50 people, I would probably also have dropped out. So it doesn't matter to me if you have a matric or not. I don't think it's a very good metric for determining determining anything. And if you have been doing something entrepreneurial, you probably haven't been keeping books, you probably haven't been formalized, and so you can't prove it. And so what we said was, okay, let's just get rid of everything. Let's just get rid of all preconditions other than the fact that we want people to have never had access to opportunity. And as long as they meet that criteria, they can apply. And then they're going to prove that they're better than everybody else from their background through a system of assessments. And we set it up, and to be honest, I look back at pictures like this, and I realize how little we knew about what we were doing. We were totally clueless. This is our first day in Alex Township, just next to Soweto, next to Sandton in Joburg. And that's my mum's beach umbrellas, my mum's tablecloth with a hole in it. I'm wearing a cricket hat that I just picked up on the way out the door. And now when I think about customer experience and what did people think of us, I cannot imagine what people thought about when they saw us like this. But we didn't know really what we were doing. I was 26, I think. But still, we got thousands of applicants. We, in the first week, got 1,000 applicants. We stopped it. We had to cut the application numbers there because it was too many. And what we found were people who, in every respect, defied stereotype. We found a taxi driver who scored in the top 1% of cognitive ability in the world compared to an American norm group. Talk about people not being resilient. I met a guy who didn't hear back about job applications when he was living in the rural Eastern Cape, so hitchhiked on a coal truck, slept overnight on the street for 3 nights, and went door to door to the companies he had applied to. People don't work hard enough. A guy who had never missed a day of work for the last 5 years. So all these examples were there. The talent was there. But finding the talent was really the easy part, actually. What do you do once you find really talented people? How do you develop them? How do you get them to the point now? We always talked about a career, not a workshop or a weekend, a career of partnership that would lead to people being as good as anybody. And we didn't really know what that track looked like. So it was a really rocky road. The first 3 entrepreneurs we selected of those 1,000, 2 left us for better offers. Basically, we didn't have contracts that prevented that from happening. We ran out of money. When we first started, I had 60,000 Rand in savings. My co-founder had 60,000 Rand. He moved back from the States with me. We went to high school together. And we ran out of money. He decided this wasn't really the thing for him, and he went back to business school in the States. And I had to borrow money from my parents for the first time. And it was quite terrible, because we didn't know if this thing would even work. So that was the bank balance. That's what the R0 is meant to represent, is that's how little money we had. That was August 2010. In September 2010, Discovery came through, and they invested 3 million Rand in our project as an enterprise development investment, as a black empowerment enterprise development investment, in fact. And I think that's also important when you talk about defying stereotypes, when you talk about what is BE. Well, BE actually allowed us to continue, allowed us to live. And they supported me because my dad's Indian and my mum's Welsh. And with that money, we got another 1,000 applicants. We entered this international competition called the Echoing Green Social Entrepreneurship Fellowship, and they looked at 3,000 applicants from 100 countries and looked for teams and ideas that had the best chance of impacting a major social problem in the world. And they chose us as one of 15, and we were only one of 3 from Africa who were selected. And those are some of the other finalists from Echoing Green. But what I realized when I went to the Echoing Green conference, I think as some people here have already talked about social entrepreneurship, but social entrepreneurship is a really sort of sexy term at the moment. And all over the world, people are talking about it, and people are telling great stories, and it's mostly young people, and it all looks and feels awesome. But a lot of the stories don't have enough substance, because the nature of the thing is that now there's competitions all over the world. I have friends who have won 12 competitions on 4 continents and have yet to start operations, or before they started operations. And so I realized if this thing is going to mean anything, it's all very well to win prizes and find people who are talented, but that was the easy part. We needed to make money, and the entrepreneurs were not making money. The 4 we had in the incubator were not making money. So I went to them last year, July, and we as an organization, cut off any external contact, and we really tried to prove to ourselves, more than anything, that was the important thing, to prove to ourselves that this thing could actually work. And the goal we set ourselves was 10,000 Rand in profit per business by December. And each business was making about 2,000, 3,000 Rand in profit. So I'll tell you first about Chris Pinnar. Chris Pinnar, when he applied to Soweto, was selling beers out of his place in Alex. His cognitive ability was in the top 3% in the world, and he started a business delivering bread door to door in Alex. He made R2 profit on the first day. By December last year, he made 15,000 Rand in profit, and he's in partnership with Kraft Foods, one of the biggest food companies, and he started a market access business. So if you want to access Alex Township, and now actually he's hired a sales team of 10 people and is offering it in all townships. If you want to access a township market, Chris can do the research for you, and Chris can do the sales and distribution for you. This month, I think he's going to make 20,000 Rand in profit. Lasika Maklo, in the hardest days when the bank balance was zero, this guy was the one who really gave me hope. He heard us on the radio, moved to Joburg. We didn't have money, so we extended our process for 4 months. He stayed in a friend's one-bedroom place in Hillbrow, waiting to hear from us, got a job, was unemployed, got a job again, waited for us, and eventually he got in. In August, he had never been on a tour and had never taken a tour of Soweto. His business is called XR Tours, telling different stories of Johannesburg, because what he experienced in Joburg was not what he had been told when he was living in the rural areas in the northwest. By December, he took 100 corporate year-end functions into Soweto in a week, one of which he had another tour guide take, and he actually that tour guide delivered his script. He's now being followed by organizations such as Lonely Planet on Twitter. He's been featured on all sorts of media channels, and I think is going to be really, I believe, will be a star in the tourism business. He's about to make about 20,000 Rand in profit this month as well. And Sekhabile Lechwati. So Sekhabile is actually, I think, probably the most extraordinary story in that period, that August to December period. When he started in August, he was selling boerewors rolls outside a nightclub in Soweto, literally boerewors rolls. He was making about 2,000 Rand a month. In December, in 1 week, he served 1,000 corporate year-end meals to clients such as SA Tourism, real high-end events. In one event, he employed 26 people, and he made 25,000 Rand in profit that month. He's exporting, and his business is to export the Chisanyama experience. I know you guys have Mzolis here. So he's exporting the Chisanyama experience into the northern suburbs of South Africa, of Johannesburg, showing people what that's about. On the back of those stories, and so Ryan left, and we didn't have, so really these guys were my co-founders, and on the back of their successes, government actually funded us a month ago to develop 1,000 entrepreneurs over the next 20 months. Yeah, thanks. When we got that news, I can't tell you what it felt like. In the last 4 months of last year, we did these businesses together. We delivered bread in Alex. We were serving boerewors rolls. If you want to know what disaster feels like, it's when you arrive at the biggest catering function a business has ever done, and you go into the trailer, and you realize that the pup and the gravy has spilled all over the chocolate strawberries. And now you've got to find a way to make dessert that tastes not too much like gravy. People thought it was it tasted interesting. Those experiences are very real, and what they did for me, I think, was to really convince myself that this thing can work, and that people really are this talented, and they really can compete on the level that we claimed at the start, or that I claimed to you earlier. And if you can imagine what it feels like for 3 years to be in your head all day, every day, thinking, if only we could get resources, if only we could do it, if only we could do it. And then for government to come through and to give us this money, for the first few days, it literally felt like living in a dream. And so we're trying to do this over the next 20 months, and we've got to build a team of about 60 people, and we're going to roll out only in Gauteng. But if we can make it happen in Gauteng, I think the next step would be to come to places like the Cape to do it all over the country, because I think there's talent all over the country that's being underutilized in South Africa at the moment. And I think, and I hope, that if we do this, I believe, in fact, that if we do this, we can really have an impact on South Africa's trajectory. And the reason that really matters to me, I've explained to you, it's a personal thing. I care about South Africa, I love South Africa, and it's partly irrational, but it's partly based on my experiences. But more important than that, more important than what it would mean for South Africa, I think that South Africa actually has a unique opportunity, and we've proved it in moments over the last couple of decades, a unique opportunity to lead the world, to show the world how to treat, to show people how to treat other people and how to live together and to respect each other. And I hope that Awethu can play our own little part in nudging South Africa onto a better trajectory, but in so doing also setting an example and providing a beacon of hope for the rest of the world. So thank you very much.